All right, let's dive right into this explainer and honestly shatter a pretty huge misconception about how we earn respect. Look, we've all been there, right? You're in a crowded meeting, you've got a fantastic idea, but your voice just gets completely lost in the shuffle. And naturally, you might think the fix is just to speak up, be a bit louder, maybe forcefully interject. Well, today we are unpacking the deep psychological architecture of respect, using some truly fascinating source material. We're going to break down exactly how true authority, it isn't demanded, it's systematically built. It's all about shifting away from that exhausting cycle of trying to prove your worth and instead cultivating this undeniable presence that literally does the heavy lifting for you.
So, how do you command instant respect? I mean, it's the million-dollar question. We all want it. We all want our presence to carry weight, to be taken seriously by our peers, our colleagues, our families. But the way most of us go about trying to get it, it's actually fundamentally flawed. See, we are culturally conditioned to think we've got to be the loudest person in the room, the one taking up the absolute most physical and auditory space. But the research points us in a completely different and, frankly, a way more powerful direction. It turns out true respect isn't about volume at all. It's about control. And there's a really stark contrast here between loudly begging for attention versus commanding it silently. When you're loud, when you're constantly demanding that people listen to you, you're essentially signaling insecurity. You're practically asking for external validation. But commanding respect? That relies on what psychologists call system 2 dominance. Now, in simple terms, this just means bypassing your brain's fast, emotional, super reactive responses. That's system 1. And instead engaging the deeper, deliberate, highly disciplined parts of your psychology. It's about showing the world that your mind is a territory you have completely mastered, rather than just being some reactive pinball machine bouncing off every trigger. To achieve that level of mastery, you have to adopt what the source calls the scariest level of discipline. You have to move in silence. Let that sit for just a second. Moving in silence is incredibly intimidating, mostly because you no longer have an audience cheering you on for your intentions. You're stripping away the instant gratification of telling people what you're gonna do. Without that cheerleading squad giving you a pat on the back before you've even started, well, you are left completely vulnerable. It's just you and the raw reality of the work itself. But this quiet, uncelebrated grind, it is the absolute foundation of commanding respect. Okay, let's move into our first major theme, mastering your inner world. Because moving in silence and building that system 2 dominance we just talked about, that starts entirely from within. Before you can even begin to project silent authority outward into your career or your relationships, you've got to do the psychological work to build an unbreakable internal architecture. The source material highlights 3 specific internal habits you've got to cultivate to make this happen. The first of these inner habits is automaticity. This essentially means building habits that run on absolute autopilot, even when your motivation inevitably dies. And let's be totally honest with ourselves. Motivation always dies eventually, right? It's just a fleeting emotion. Automaticity, on the other hand, is permanent. Think about brushing your teeth. You don't need to read a self-help book or feel deeply motivated to do it. It's just what you do. When you start operating this way with your major life goals, you project absolute self-concept clarity. You know exactly who you are and what you do, day in and day out. And when you have that level of internal clarity, it becomes practically impossible for others to misunderstand your value.
So how do you actually achieve that automaticity? You do it through something called implementation intentions. This means taking a daily decision and turning it into a fixed, non-negotiable system. Instead of waking up and asking yourself, should I go to the gym today? Do I feel like working on that project? The system dictates your reality. If it is 6 a.m., I am at the gym. If it is 8 p.m., I am writing. It fundamentally removes your choices in the heat of the moment. You aren't expending precious willpower deciding whether or not to do the work because the system has already decided for you. This psychological habit literally kills excuses entirely and turns you into a machine of quiet execution. And to lock all of this in, you must maintain a stable sense of identity, one that doesn't rise and fall based on what other people post or think. True internal mastery means your identity is not fragile. It is completely independent of the endless noise of social media, the unsolicited opinions of onlookers, or just the shifting trends around you. Think about it. If your self-worth spikes when you get a compliment, but then crashes the second you get criticized, you are basically outsourcing your authority. But when you build this stable identity, your worth becomes entirely self-generated. It makes you practically immune to the chaotic world outside.
So let's just briefly recap this internal architecture. You build automaticity so you can function without relying on the fickle emotion of motivation. You set implementation intentions to kill your own excuses using fixed automated systems. And you maintain a stable identity that acts as this impenetrable shield against external noise. Locking in these three inner habits is the absolute prerequisite. Seriously, you cannot command respect outwardly until this foundation is rock solid. It's like the engine running quietly under the hood.
All right, moving on to our next phase, executing with cognitive restraint. We've built the internal architecture, now we really need to look at how this manifests in the physical world. How do you interact with others? How do you carry yourself in that crowded meeting we talked about earlier? Well, the secret lies in highly effective outward habits that are entirely centered around the concept of restraint. When you're executing, you absolutely must do so without announcing it. And here is a surprising, frankly mind-blowing glitch in human psychology. Talking too much about your goals actually tricks your brain into feeling like you've already achieved them. It's crazy, but you get this premature dopamine hit just from having the conversation. Your brain confuses the social reward of talking about the goal with the actual reward of completing it, and that absolutely kills your drive to do the actual walking. So to command respect, you have to starve yourself of that cheap dopamine. Keep your plans quiet. Let your actions be your only announcement.
Which leads us directly into the habit of cognitive restraint. Instead of just jumping to speak, observe quietly. Employ a strategic pause. See, when you choose to listen and truly analyze the room, rather than rushing to nervously fill the silence with your own voice, you show the world that your mind is mastered territory. Silence actually makes people lean in. And when you finally do speak after practicing that restraint, your words carry immense weight because everyone in the room knows they're highly deliberate, not just reactive noise. Now, the final external habit is all about what you choose to pursue. Look, most people spend their entire lives seeking mental and physical comfort. They just naturally gravitate toward the path of least resistance. But to build silent authority, you have to fundamentally prioritize embracing mental challenge. You have to physically show the world through your daily choices and your actions that you aren't afraid of the struggle of growth. You actively lean into the hard things, the complex projects, the difficult conversations, while everyone else is just shrinking away back into their comfort zones. Let's quickly recap these outward steps. Step 1, execute silently. Stop tricking your brain by talking about your plans. Step 2, practice restraint. Use that strategic pause and make your words actually count. And step 3, embrace the struggle. Consistently choose the mental challenge over the comfortable couch. Sequentially, these 3 steps build this undeniable outward aura of silent authority. People instinctively just cannot help but respect someone who operates with that level of quiet intensity. So, when you finally tie all of this together, the internal automaticity, the fixed intentions, that incredibly stable identity, and you pair it with the external execution of silence and restraint, you arrive at one ultimate realization about human psychology. Real discipline doesn't speak. It doesn't need to. It just shows up and changes your direction. It is a quiet, unstoppable force. When you embody these habits, you don't ever have to ask or loudly beg for respect again. Why? Because the undeniable, towering results of your quiet discipline, they do all the heavy talking for you. So I'll leave you with this. Will you continue seeking those temporary spikes of motivation, relying on the loud, fleeting noise of the crowd? Or will you step up and apply these 6 psychological habits of silent authority to achieve true, lasting transformation? The choice is entirely yours.